Welcome back to another episode of Heavy Wireless, part of the Packet Pushers Podcast Network. And today I'm talking with Daryl DeRosia about Ubiquiti, specifically Ubiquiti in the enterprise. Daryl, how are you today?
Doing well, Keith. Thanks for having me.
And you've got a new job. You run more than just the Wi-Fi, but for the Memphis Grizzlies. Tell us a little bit about what are the Memphis Grizzlies?
So, the Memphis Grizzlies are a professional basketball team in the NBA based in Memphis, Tennessee. And we're also responsible for the operations and the FedEx Forum, so which hosts every type of event you can think of in an arena, from professional wrestling to bull riding, monster trucks, concerts, as well as college and professional basketball. So we host 40 plus NBA games a year, and then another 20 or so college, and then concerts. Just depends on the schedule and the time of year for those. Professional wrestling once or twice a year, monster trucks on somewhat regular basis as well. Professional bull riding has been a staple during WLPC timeframes. Lots of activities.
Well, how big is it, seating this wise?
We've got just over 18,000 feet, 18,000 seats rather, in a basketball configuration. And each event has a different seating arrangement, but that's our standard.
So when they change, do you do hockey there too? Is the floor?
The floor is capable, but we don't host hockey at this point in time. There's another smaller arena in South Haven that hosts hockey.
So you're running the network there, and
That's correct.
you're running Ubiquiti, which for a lot of us for years have been like, well, Ubiquiti is good for the SMB. You're definitely not SMB when you're that size. Uh,
No, no, not at all. And we've got multiple business units and different requirements within our facility as well. Um, we, as part of the arena, right, we have vendors that are here. So we've got food service vendors. We have the fans that come in. We've got media that comes in. And then we have to accommodate the needs of the shows that come through and other uh, businesses that are renting out the facility for a period of time, right? In addition to that, we've got our administrative offices, we've got our basketball operations, which have very different requirements from a networking standpoint and Wi-Fi. Because basketball, they're hooking up everything from a Sonos to a weight machine to the machine that is the sauna, and all those other things are connected to the network. And then in our business operations, we've also got podcasting that happens and all the production around that. And security is also a big thing here as well, because we've got to make sure that all 18,000 people that come in are safe. And, that if there are issues, we can provide evidence to the police or law enforcement where required and necessary to help. And then, we're also broadcasting that content out for the podcast. So all of that, is going out over the internet, crossing the network, and it's all powered with Ubiquiti, specifically Unify.
okay, so that sounds like it's not quite a small business anymore. Were you part of the decision to move to Ubiquiti in this site?
Ubiquiti was here when I came back to the team, and what I have done is kind of accelerate the progress with migrating over to Ubiquiti. So all of our administrative building is 100% Ubiquiti. We've been adding additional cameras now that we've got like the ENVRs, and adding additional capacity and things of that nature. But Ubiquiti is an easy decision to make from price point, and from a performance standpoint.
So just EVM, EVR. Want to describe what that is?
Uh, yeah, ENVR is the Enterprise Network Video Recorder. So each one of these boxes for you, rack mount box, has two power supplies on it and redundant network connectivity as well. It's got a couple SFPs on the back and a 10 gig copper connection so that you can connect it redundantly, and it can hold over 100 cameras if you've got kind of older or low res cameras. At 4K, it's somewhere between 70 and 90 cameras. So But we've got four of those loaded up, and we're currently working on a fifth right now as we get ready for the playoffs and make sure that we've got coverage in all the locations that we need coverage.
Well, how about we just back up and describe the building's wired infrastructure, both copper and fiber? I mean, most of us can imagine what a bowl in a normal stadium looks like. 18,000 basketball, it's not outdoor, it's all indoor. But how is it all cabled up?
So when the building was opened um, in 2003, 2004 timeframe, so about 20, a little over 20 years ago, prior to that, an RCDD came in and said, okay, we're going to have an MDF in this location and we're going to have IDF. So we have what we call quads or quadrants throughout the building. So we have IDFs that stack in each quad. So we call it A, B, C, and D quad. And we have that on the event level all the way through the catwalk. So um, we have multiple levels, some of which are fan facing, others that are not fan facing, right? You can't get to some of those areas on event level. You definitely can't get to those locations on catwalk or the mechanical level as a fan. But we have fiber that interconnects all of those locations and gets them back to the MDF. And the MDF, of course, is where we have our internet connections come in as well. We've got two 10 gig circuits from Comcast, and then we've got another 10 gig circuit coming from Verizon right now. And we just aggregate all that bandwidth, distribute it throughout the building, and we have wired and wireless services that all go back to those quads. In addition to that, we've got some other locations that are a little atypical because we have access points on the scoreboard, for example. So we actually have fiber that runs all the way up in the dome and then comes down the cables that raise and lower the scoreboard. And we actually have, you know, 10 gig, 25 gig fiber connections available on the scoreboard as well, where we have access points that cover the lower bowl.
Okay, so we're talking about wireless. How did you go about designing wireless for this kind of setup? I mean, there's a lower bowl, kind of a mezzanine level, an upper bowl. Where did you put your APs?
So with the wireless design, you really are restricted to where you have assets. And in our case, I was looking for overhead assets. I've done a lot of watching of crowd behavior and how people are using their devices. And for me, I've noticed that in concerts, people hold their phones above their heads. So you could have something come from behind and you'll be able to connect to the phone that way. But in basketball or in a lot of other environments, people tend to hold their phones lower unless they're doing recording, right? So they usually hold it between their legs or, around chest level. So if you're trying to come from behind, that doesn't work in a basketball configuration. You'll end up with frustrated users because the access point, you really have the best possible performance. You need that clear line of sight, right? And if you lose 10 dB per person, you don't get very far coming from behind, right? So were able to put the lower bowl on the scoreboard, and our furthest location from where the access point is on the scoreboard to where the users are is about 90 feet. And then our closest location is 45. So we've got a range to those access points, and that covers the lower bowl. With the upper bowl, we have a catwalk and we've got a ring that goes around, and we've got antennas that are pointing straight down from the catwalk, and that covers the upper bowl. And the closest location to the upper bowl is also about 45 feet, give or take. And then the furthest location from there is around 65 to 70 feet. And part of that is where that access point is versus the slope and the angles of those seats. That leaves out everything on that club level or the mezzanine level. But 15,000 seats roughly are that lower bowl and upper bowl area. So we've got those covered currently with the UWB XGs. During this off season, those will be replaced with the E7 audience. that we've been doing a lot of testing on here recently. And then we have underseat enclosures around the that mezzanine or club level, and we're using different channels on that club level. So we've got 4 channels in 5 gig that are dedicated to that level. And what that does is it allows us to get reuse between the upper and lower bowl. And I've seen as much as three times reuse in the arena, which is really difficult to get when all of the devices can see each other and hear each other. So
Just to back up, you use some Ubiquiti specific names. What are those, the old and new access points you're talking about?
uh, yeah, the UWB is let me actually get the name of the product. Hold on just a second because I just use the acronyms at this point. I've been doing it for so long. It's the base station XG is the UWB XG. So it has 3 5 gig radios that are software selectable from 50 to 90 degrees beam widths. We use those on at 50, and we have one of those servicing every 2 to 3 sections in the lower bowl, and then for the upper bowl, it's roughly the same. Just depends on the seating count. And the E7 audience is a replacement for that product or the next generation of that product, and it brings Wi-Fi 7 and 6 gigahertz into the mix.
You'd mentioned having channel reuse. How did you calculate that channel reuse for your bowl?
I monitor the circuit utilization specifically, and we know where our people are in the arena. So I can look at the uplink from the different locations, and I can also look at the internet usage. I've got the Wi-Fi network completely physically separated from everything else, so I can look at just the Wi-Fi internet connectivity. And I was looking at it during the Lakers game this past weekend, and we were at 800 meg each direction, pretty much the entire game until the fourth quarter. And then I guess the action got a little bit exciting. People started streaming because the upload went from 800 to 1.2, 1.3 gigabits a second during the fourth quarter, specifically during the last about 5 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. So it was interesting watching, the typical being 800 meg each direction, which in other arenas that I've been in with similar capabilities, usually you see that cap off at about 750 megabits per second aggregate, so combined up and down. And we, for the entire game, we're over double that. And then during the peak time, we actually just way exceeded that as
I,
well.
I, I would have thought when it was exciting on the court, the throughput would have went down because they're not focusing on their phones. But you're saying during the exciting times, what are they recording it or something?
They're streaming it. Yeah, they're absolutely streaming it live because some events are vanity events, and I see that very commonly at vanity events, right? Like when the not the Final Four, but March Madness was here, right? The NCAA tournament. Um, a lot of people were, it was their first event, or they were out on social media sharing their experience with others. So, um, big concerts, I'll see that a lot during the end where people will put on, whatever social platform live, they'll go and put their favorite song, right? And usually those come towards the end of the performance. So, but with basketball, I think a lot of people were, taking highlights of Ja and LeBron and some of the other players as they were doing their thing. So, capturing the moment and sharing it with all their friends across the world.
Well, it just proves one point that one of the reasons I like certain presentations at WLPC are when they have data that supports something that I thought was different. Like I thought it would go down, but you have data that shows it actually goes up, and then we have to figure out why. And I think that's really useful as wireless professionals that we have a thought, but they're open to go, well, the data shows something different. Let's
I always thought that as well, but I've done a lot of different events, and the Democratic National Convention in 16 was one of them, right? And I was watching that event, and we were capped at about 740, 750 megabits a second aggregate for the venue because it was all in one location, right? And it was very interesting to me that um, when uh, certain people got on the stage, the traffic flipped from being all downstream to all upstream. And that was the first time I observed that. I was like, oh, okay. People are capturing the moment and they're sharing it as quickly as they can. So,
Yeah, that's hey, whether it be in a large public venue or even in a school, when you see students do certain, they all turn their iPads on the same time, and you think you're going to see one thing, but you actually see something else. So, data trumps feelings, that's for sure.
it does. It does.
You're now moving to Wi-Fi 7 and 6 gig. Well, I would ask why, but it's really obvious. What are you predicting at this point is going to happen as you add the entire 6 gigahertz channel, 1200 megahertz? I mean, in the U.S., you're in the U.S. How's that going to affect what's going on in your future there in the bowl?
I hope that it will get me more capacity, and based on my testing, it'll definitely get me a lot more capacity. The question is how much time in the life cycle of the devices, because we don't control the consumer devices that come in, right? So at WLPC, we were doing pass point testing, and we saw about 50% of the devices were 6 gig capable. And that is probably one of the highest locations from a usage standpoint, right?
Well, considering the
Of
audience, yeah, I was a little disappointed. I thought there'd be more.
I was hoping there would be more too. In my initial testing here, I'm seeing about 20% of the devices are 6 gig capable. So if I can take 20% of the capacity off of 5 gig, that gives us additional capacity on five, and as well as having a lot, ocean of capacity on 6 gigahertz for our press, our media, our fans to enjoy, as well as our employees during the events. I'm hoping by the start of next season, more devices will be refreshed and we'll get to 30%. But it may be the end of next season because it's really dependent on when Apple and Android release new devices and people refresh to those devices. We'll see.
In your testing, have you tested MLO?
I have not been testing MLO specifically. I've been specifically looking at what 6 gig channel width makes the most sense for us. Right now, it's looking like 80 is where we get the most bang for our buck, but that may change. And I'm less worried about reuse on 6 gigahertz because we've got a lot more airtime and we've got wider channels. I think we won't have the collisions and contention that we have on 5 gig today. So we'll get we'll get a lot more capacity out of it, and I think it'll be a good thing for everybody involved.
And not hopefully, but I just predict as the years go down, we'll have more and more 6 gig clients. It just happens.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Every cycle, right? We're seeing more 6 gig capable clients, and it's really just a matter of refreshing some of the older devices because uh, my son is heavy tech, but he is still using an iPhone 12 right now because there hasn't been anything that's drove him to spend his money on getting a new phone yet, right? And everybody's refresh cycle is different, right? So, well, it'll take a few years, but I think in 3 to 4 years we'll want more 6 gig radio. So we'll be looking at need for a lot more capacity in that 6 gig spectrum, and we'll have it there to use it.
And you're leaving yourself some headroom basically. If your sweet spot's 80 today and 6 gig takes off, you can always go to 40s or
But we can always
20s.
drop it down to 40 or 20 if
Yeah.
we need to. I don't anticipate we'll go to 20 there, but we have the option should we choose to. And sometimes events will come in and they'll say, hey, we need a channel whether it's on 5 or 6 or 2.4 for our equipment, right? So they have back of house stuff that is using unlicensed frequency for whatever reason, and they want the channel available in the entire pole. So it gives us options there as well.
Final question, and this is more of an opinion. Is Ubiquiti ready for enterprise?
I don't see any reason that somebody wouldn't select Ubiquiti in the enterprise at this point. Um, the product works great. We've been using it here for well over the 2 years that I've been back with the Memphis Grizzlies, and we're supporting 5 to 7,000 concurrent users during events, and it's working great. If it can handle that, it can handle anything that a small business or medium business or even enterprise will throw at it. Um, you know, they've made a lot of changes internally at Ubiquiti as well to add support and additional products with things like MC Lag, the Enterprise Fortress Gateway, a lot of other additional switching options for higher capacity. Um, you know, there's a lot there to choose from and to look at and to match up with any needs that anybody has. And I haven't seen any use case that you can't configure the Ubiquiti gear to meet. So
Well, thanks for your time and the information you shared about how you're taking care of things there at the Memphis Grizzlies. Daryl, if someone wanted to track you down on the socials, how would they find you?
LinkedIn's probably the easiest way. Daryl DeRosia and part of the Memphis Grizzlies. Also on X, the Wi-Fi Pro Slack is a pretty easy place to find me as well. Um, or just shoot me an email, dderosia@grizzlies.com.
You've been listening to another episode of Heavy Wireless, powered of the Packet Pushers Podcast Network. And we've been talking to Daryl DeRosia about the Memphis Grizzlies Enterprise Network running all on Ubiquiti. If you have any other topics you'd like to talk about, just come onto the Packet Pushers website and leave us a note and we'll follow up. Thanks for your time today.